The bridge pattern is a structural design pattern, and quite frankly, it's one of the most important design patterns. So how does this pattern work? Well, the idea behind this pattern is that you separate the implementation of some kind of object's functionality from that object. And that gives us very decoupled code. Our code is more flexible so that we can adapt to any crazy requirement that gets thrown at us. And the whole idea behind this pattern is composition over inheritance. So we're composing some kind of object of many other objects rather than having a gigantic inheritance tree, and that's what makes our code very flexible. And honestly, I had trouble coming up with a demo for this pattern because I'm just so used to using the bridge pattern. So my application is based on books as represented by this iBook interface, and a book can be published. So there's many types of books. There's an audiobook, a digital book, so kind of like an ebook, and then a print book, so your standard book that gets printed on paper. So it makes sense that I would have classes for each of these different types of books. And all of these different book classes are abstract. So if I want to publish an actual book, let's say I want to publish an autobiography, then all I would do is create a new class. I'll call it autobiography. And I'm going to publish this as an audiobook. So this class will be the autobiography audiobook, and I will simply inherit from audiobook. And then all I have to do is implement the book's content, which is an IEnumerable of strings. So each of those strings in this collection is a line in the book, and we're going to see that. So let's get some book content going in here. All right, so here is my autobiography. So I was born, I learned the program, and then I became a YouTuber. So these are all the lines in my book. So this seems like a pretty extendable solution that we have here. To create a new book, all I had to do was inherit from audiobook, and then just plot my book's content inside of this method that I override. And now to publish my book, I can just instantiate here in my main and publish it. So there we go, pretty awesome stuff. And my book was very popular, and it was so popular that people were asking me to print it. So now I need a print book. So okay, I'll create a new class over here. So the autobiography print book, and then my incredibly awesome extendable solution I have here. All I have to do is inherit from print book and implement this abstract class, and then my book content. So to do this, I guess I'll just copy this and paste it into my print book. Is that good? I guess that's okay. Let's publish my print book now. So there we go. Let's publish that. Very nice. We successfully printed the book. Dang it. So there's a typo in my book. I became a YouTuber, not I become a YouTuber. Now I have to update this in 2 places, and this is just not a good solution. So we have our book content copied in 2 places. We got to change it and update it in multiple places. What if I want a digital book? Then I have to get it in 3 places. So we just have this explosion of classes over here. So how can we fix this? Well, let's meet the bridge pattern. So the idea of the bridge pattern is to separate the implementation of an object's functionality from the object. So in that case, our object is the print book, and the functionality is getting the book content. So this is the functionality that we want to move to a different class. So I'm going to create a new folder over here for book content providers, because the book content is what needs to be provided to each of my different books. And now I'll have an IBookContentProvider interface, and this interface is going to take care of the get book content functionality. So let's cut that out from this print book class, and in fact we're going to remove it from all of our different book classes. There we go. Paste that in our interface and remove these modifiers, and we can just call this get content. So now I simply have to implement this interface for my autobiography. Let's go ahead and do that. So the autobiography book content provider, implement my IBookContentProvider interface, and now let's go into these old autobiography book classes and snag this list of my book content and paste that in my book content provider. And now that my book content is moved over here, I can delete these autobiography books I have, because the book content functionality is no longer coupled to my actual books. It's moved to these book content providers. And now to get a book's content, it's no longer going to be in the subclasses. It's going to be from my book content provider. So that's going to be a field in each of my different book types. And IBookContentProvider, make sure we import that and get that, and now I use that content provider to get the content for a book that I want to publish. And this constructor needs to be public because each of my different book types are no longer going to be abstract. The only reason they were abstract is because subclasses would implement the book content, but obviously that's not what we want, because then we get class explosion. So now let's just go through and update our other types of books, get the book content provider in here, no longer need abstract classes, and then just use the content provider. And then same thing with the print book as well. So now back in my program.cs, to publish my autobiography, I need my book content provider for my autobiography content. So just instantiate that. And then I'm going to publish this as a print book. So I can just pass my content provider to the print book. And now all of a sudden I need this as a digital book. And that's pretty easy. So all I have to do for that is instantiate a digital book and pass in my content provider. And there we go, I published both of my different book types. And now if I ever make a new book, so this is a book on design patterns, so the design patterns book content provider, implement my IBookContentProvider interface. There we go, there's my book. And now to publish this, all I'd have to do is instantiate that book content provider and everything would work. Whereas before I would have to create a bunch of different subclasses for that new book. So this is much easier, much more flexible, and much more decoupled. Oh, one sec, I'm getting the phone call. Hello? Yeah, I can do that. Okay. Yeah, it sounds good. I'll get right on it. Thanks. Alright, so I just got off the phone with the client that I'm building this application for, and they said that before we publish a book, so we publish a book right here, before we do that, we need to save the book's content to a database, which is just like crazy. Like, why? I don't even know. But that's the requirement, and I need to satisfy that requirement. Alright, so here we go. I'm saving the book's content to the database before I publish a digital book. Now I just have to go through and do this for the audio book. Okay, there we go. And then the print book as well. So now I have a little bit of duplication here, and I'm not sure I like that. It kind of feels like a code smell. There's something going on here. So what exactly is the difference between each of these different classes? Well, it seems like the only difference is how we publish the book. Everything else, so getting the book's content and then saving the book, is the same. So maybe I can move this publishing functionality into its own hierarchy of classes like I have over here for the book content, and then that would decouple all of this different functionality between these classes from the shared functionality. And then that would also mean if I ever had to publish a book in a different way, maybe to like a magazine, I don't know why I'd do that, then all I'd have to do is implement a new book publisher rather than having to create an entirely new book. So that's what we're going to do. Let's bridge the publishing functionality to its own class hierarchy. So I'm going to create a new folder over here, book publishers, and we're going to start off with an interface, so an IBookPublisher, and all we want to do is publish a book's content. So in our case, that's an IEnumerable of string. It would probably be more useful to actually have like a book content class rather than using this raw IEnumerable for string. It would read a lot better, but again, we're just focusing on the bridge pattern here. And then what are the different ways that I want to publish a book? Well, I want to publish a digital book. So we'll have a digital book publisher implementing our IBookPublisher interface. And all we do for that is grab that logic from our digital book class. So we can just cut that out and paste that in there. And then we have a print book publisher. Same thing, implement the interface, grab that from our print book and paste it in here. And last but not least, the audiobook publisher, and grab that content and paste that functionality in here as well. And now that the book publishers are in their own class hierarchy, I don't need different book types for each different type of publishing type. Instead, I can just have one book class, and then this book class will take some kind of IBookPublisher. So we'll get that as a parameter through the constructor, and then the publish a book in this publish method will take the publisher and call publish and pass in the book content. And now I can simply delete my audiobook and print book over here, because to support those, all I have to do is pass in the correct book publisher to my single book class. So now back in my program.cs, we're just going to have a book, and this book needs a publisher, so an IBookPublisher, import that, and I'm going to publish this as an audiobook, and then just pass that publisher to my book. And there we go, easy peasy. So now I've supported this new requirement, and I no longer have a bunch of duplication throughout my code, a gigantic convoluted inheritance hierarchy, and my code is very flexible and modular. If I want a new publisher, all I have to do is implement the IBookPublisher interface, and if I want a different book to publish, I can just implement the IBookContentProvider interface as well. Whereas before, I had to keep on extending this iBook interface, and things were getting out of hand very quick. So now my client is going to be pretty happy. I implemented this functionality to save the book to the database pretty quickly, and really all it took was this one different line of code. And now I don't think I'm going to implement this, but let's just say that the client wanted me to save the book to a file for some reason. Well, then I would abstract all of this saving functionality to its own class hierarchy, and then I'd have something like an iBook saver, and I would have a database book saver, and maybe a file book saver. But not going to get into that. I feel like we've covered enough here. So that is the bridge pattern, one of the most important design patterns to know. And the key here is composition over inheritance. We've composed this book class of a bunch of different classes that implement the book's functionality that is required for the book to be published. So hopefully you all can use this in your own applications. If you have any questions, criticisms, or concerns, be sure to leave them below in the comments section. Other than that, leave a like or subscribe for more. Thank you.